and we are so very excited to be hosting a lot of information about the fifth grade transition. We have Dr. Heineman, Ms. Kathleen Stotler, Ms. Tara Bowman, and over there are William and constituent Ms. Cheryl Howard, in case there's any questions at that point. So they're here to tell you a lot of great information. This is going to be a videotape, so this will be available online. So if you don't hear anything, you need something repeated, you'll be able to see that. Thank you to our PTO who is hosting the food, so thank you, ladies. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Kathleen Stotler. I'm the supervisor of the World Language and English Language Learner Program in our district. And this is
Tara Bowman, the mathematics supervisor of the district, as well as the state testing district. But only it's connected to the state testing.
Okay, so we're here to tell you a little bit about what your children will experience regarding mathematics and world language when they enter William and Middle School. Over the past probably 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of changes in the way we teach and the courses that we offer. And certainly since you were in high school, things have changed a lot. So we want to enrich you with some information about how we teach, what we teach, and the options available to your children next year.
So I'm going to start with right now, currently in 5th grade. There's 2 options for students, your children that are in 5th grade. They've either taken 5th grade math, or they have been a part of the Telescope math program, which is considered the gifted and talented, and they were identified by 3rd grade if they were in that program. And if they were in that program, then they have already learned 5th grade standards as well as 6th grade standards. So those are the 2 populations of our 5th graders going into William with math.
Okay, so our world language program currently is in place in the 4th and 5th grade, and we teach Latin. It is taught by the classroom teacher. Just to give you a little background, that has changed several times due to state cuts in funding, due to standards that we need to spend more time in certain areas, there's not enough time in the day. There's a lot of causes. In the past, we've had elementary language specialists teaching the courses. We have had computer-based programs. We have had 1 day a week, we've had 2 days a week, we've had a hybrid. But for the last, I want to say 6 or so years, we've offered Latin instruction. And we focus it primarily on history, culture, and vocabulary. And that's because the teachers, the general education teachers are teaching this. We can't expect them to be fluent in Latin, but we've given them a strong foundation with the course developed by our Latin teachers. So that kind of gives them a glimpse into word histories, how we look at different words and how you translate things, and it just gets them excited about learning about a different culture in a different way. And it prepares them so that when they enter the middle school, they can continue with Latin or take a spoken language. So right now they have an average of 30 minutes per week. Some teachers do more than that, and they do every couple weeks. They divide it after the science unit or after social studies unit. There's a hybrid of things happening, and it's based on what's best for that teacher in that class. But the average is 30 minutes per week of Latin instruction.
Okay, so this is one of the very many math charts and sequence charts that we have in the district. This is how I just wanted to begin by giving you just the basic overview, and I'm going to end back with this chart as well. So, but basically, if you see a student in 5th grade, you go across, they right now have been in Math 5, which is awesome, or gifted and talented in Math 5. Now next year, as a 6th grader, they will have 2 options. Math 6, which is where most of them will go, the typical progression, and the accelerated Math 6, which would be where the telescope gifted and talented math kids go. And then we can continue down into 7th and 8th, and I will come back to that, but I want to just spend the beginning talking about next year. So, Math 6. Basically, in our Math 6 program, what the students will be doing is taking all the standards that they've had so far in K-5 and really solidifying the big 4 pieces of the K-5, as well as locking it all in. Is like what I like to say in 6th grade would be that they would be connecting. They've done ratio, they've done rates, they've done whole number multiplication, division, and so in 6th grade math, they will be taking those skills, solidifying them, adapting them to word problems. They also are going to complete their understanding of division of fractions. which they have started in 4th and 5th grade in elementary school. And they're going to extend their number sets to the rational as well as the integer. So that's in 6th grade math is when negative numbers will start coming in. They're going to write and interpret expressions and equations. They have done some of that in 4th and 5th grade. Again, they will be solidifying that in 6th grade math. And statistical thinking will be the new standard that is brought in the 6th grade math. Okay, I'm not talking loud enough.
We're all surprised.
Wow. Is this on?
No,
Is this on?
just on.
You gotta hold the buttons. Don't break my.
It's on. The light's on. Okay.
That's
Two
touch.
multitask. Oh wow, that is much better. Okay, so, and then of course, the students have been exposed to the 8 mathematical practices that will continue all through high school, right up through calculus. Those mathematical practice are intertwined in all the different courses. So the accelerated Math 6, really what that is in simple terms is it's 7th and 8th grade math. The gifted and talented or the telescope program means those students, by the time they leave their elementary school, they will have completed the 5th grade standards as well as the 6th grade standards. So coming into the accelerated 6th grade math, they will then be learning 7th and 8th grade standards with the goal of getting them prepared for algebra in 7th grade. So the same thing here. Now these are pretty new standards because they have solidified all that K-6 stuff before they get to the middle school. So they're going to take those rates and ratios and connect them to proportional relationships. They're going to do a lot of understanding with rational numbers and working with expressions and a lot of linear equations before they get into the algebra, which is when the quadratics come in. They're going to solve problems with scale drawings. It'll be their first time doing 3-dimensional with the area, volume, and surface area with unknowns. And again, back to the statistics, they will be drawing inferences from them, as well as the practices coming through with all of the concepts being taught. In this class, if the student has a B or better for the end of the year grade on assessments, then they will move on to algebra in the 7th grade. Okay, so now the prerequisites for this accelerated Math 6 class. Obviously, the students who are currently identified as gifted and talented, this was the goal. So the goal for them in 3rd grade was to make sure that they were ready to take this class in 6th grade. However, we have the or, meaning that we are aware that there may be students that were not identified, did not participate in the telescope program, or even new to the district, that we would like to give them the opportunity to demonstrate whether or not this is the appropriate place for them, because since they have not been exposed to the 6th grade standards, they will be skipping a year of math. And then they will be learning 2 years of math to be able to get into an accelerated program in 7th grade. However, if a student does get a 245 or higher when they take the spring MAP test, which will be in May, then you will be invited, or your child will be invited, to make a decision if they would like to then take an in-house test that will then assess all their K-5 skills as well as some 6th grade standard skills to make sure that they have at least an 80% foundation before moving on. And then if so, they will be given that opportunity. And I just put down there too, just for you to know, that the MAP test that we will be looking at will be the one in May. And if they do get that score, then within the 2nd week of June, and they would like to take the invitation to take the test, they may take the test to see how they do with the skills. Okay, and on the other side of it, near and dear to my heart, is the math support. Because there are students who will be coming from the different elementary schools into Annan that may be struggling or may not have that confidence. And as we are an at-level standard, so if you are a 6th grade student, you are taking 6th grade standards. We don't go lower than the average or what you should be doing. So in 6th grade, we do offer support classes. Students do not have to start the year in this class. It's an ongoing where students can be recommended to drop in. It is an additional math course that takes the place of a cycle in 6th grade. And is it quarterly in 6th grade, the cycles?
No, they're every 6 weeks.
Every 6 weeks. So that means every 6 weeks, it's nice just to start in the beginning of a cycle, so they would miss out on a cycle to be in this class. But the philosophy really of this class is to get the confidence up with the students, help them with test-taking strategies, reinforce the skills that are already introduced in the regular classroom, the dynamics of the teachers that teach it, the support class, as well as the teachers that are teaching Math 6 are in communication with each other. So these students get individualized attention, and really the goal is to get their confidence up, get the underlying skills up so they can eventually move on and be more successful in the math classes. Okay, so now I'm going back to this chart. Currently, we do have 7th grade algebra, and we have not had, as Ms. Stotler said, things have changed. We have not had an accelerated Math 6. Look at everybody taking pictures of this. You would think this is like a Van Gogh or something. Oh my gosh. Okay, so right now, currently, we have 6th grade students in 6th grade math that will take algebra in 7th grade, even though they were not exposed to the accelerated 6th grade math course. So the criteria for that, it is on my website, and it does remain. So basically, a student who is in 6th grade may still get into 7th grade algebra, even if he or she is not in the accelerated 6th grade math. This is our first year. We're walking this up, so we don't want to take away anything. Obviously, the goal would be that as we go a couple more years, there should be very few students who go from 6th grade math into 7th grade algebra. It should be the majority of our 7th grade algebra students come from 6th grade accelerated math. It's just a better time to be skipping standards, because currently our 7th grade, they go from 6th grade math, learning 6th grade standards, into algebra in 7th grade. So they skip 2 years of standards. So the goal is to help get rid of that skipping and really have a nice progression straight through. So there'll be, again, down the road, very few kids that would be the way they get into Algebra 7, but that is definitely an option. And then as you go down, you can see, so just following 5th grade student taking 5th grade math, the typical grade progression would be to end up in algebra in 9th grade, but I'm talking about the accelerated 6th grade math ending up in algebra in 7th grade. There is also the opportunity for a 6th grade math student to take 7th grade math and then also go right into algebra in 8th grade. And the way I like to say it is accelerating by 1 year or accelerating by 2 years. So taking algebra in 8th grade, you are accelerating by 1 year. Taking algebra in 7th grade, you're accelerating by 2 years. So, and you know your students, your children, and you know the pathway. And there's always, at the high school, we're doing scheduling right now, there's always opportunities, especially at the high school. If you want to take a picture of a chart, there's a high school chart you can take a picture of that has the amount of pathways. So at the end of the day, you know, I do want to just say from the bottom of my heart to love your children and wherever they are, and the best place for them now, especially moving into a new school, middle school, they're going to have to, just figuring out their lock or combinations are going to be difficult for them in lots of different ways, to just really go through and understand what may be the best deal, and there's no downside. A student also taking accelerated 6th grade math and feels like it wasn't the right thing, doesn't get that B, there's no downside. Then they're in 7th grade and they're doing 7th grade math and they can do algebra in 8th grade. So the way you play it, there's so many different permutations of all of this. Okay. And then I just wanted to end with the practices that are consistent throughout our math program, and from elementary school through middle school through high school, there are different emphasis on different practices. And in the middle school, the two big ones is the perseverance and actually being able to like defend your work and critique other students' work, which is something I know a lot of the elementary, especially in 5th grade, they're starting to do that with the students, but that's really the big jump in the middle school. That is not just procedure. Teachers are not looking for just answers. Teachers are not looking for the procedure. It's a lot more conceptual and being able to have a conversation, dialogue about the math as well as just getting the answer. So with that being said, now world language.
Okay, just by a show of hands, how many of you speak another language? That's so great. I should raise my hand too. How many of your children speak another language? That's remarkable. So you know how exciting it is to be part of another culture, to be able to understand another language, to understand another way of thinking. So for those of you whose children don't speak another language, this is a really cool time. I remember being in elementary school and going to the middle school, and all I was excited about was lockers and languages. It's funny you say that. To me, that was like outstanding. I took German and French and Spanish, and I had a locker, and that was all I needed in life. So for those of you whose children don't speak another language, this is new, which sometimes can be extremely intimidating. There is definitely a connotation that goes along with languages that it's hard. Not everyone can learn them, and that's not true because you all at least speak one language. So you've all learned one, and your children can learn one or more. And our program does a really great job at easing students into that. So what we offer in the middle school, we have 3 different entry points. And as Ms. Bowman mentioned, the normal track, Math 5, Math 6, Math 7, Math 8, our normal track is daily instruction in a language beginning in 6th grade. So they can continue with Latin, they can take Spanish, French, or Italian, and the instruction is daily. The alternatives to that are some students have some struggles when they get into WAMs at the beginning. The organization, the transitions, different teachers, harder classes in some subject areas. So in some rare exceptions, we allow students to opt out of world language in 6th grade so that they can get the appropriate support classes they need, okay? And that's fine. So what we do for those students is in 7th grade, they can begin Spanish. We only have one late entry program. Typically we have anywhere between 15 and 25 students enrolled in this. This class is for students who didn't take a language in 6th grade, or for students who enter our school in 7th grade from a different type of program, we allow them to take this class. So we condense middle school world language, that is the 3-year program, into 2 years. And it's fine, because in 6th grade we take it really slow. So by 7th grade, they're just thinking differently. You'll see, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade children do not look alike. They don't think alike, and they don't act alike. So it's okay to condense the program starting later. They'll be fine. And then they continue 8th grade, and they end off with their peers entering level 2 in the high school. The other option is a semester elective course beginning in 8th grade called Foundations of Language. So you mentioned a math support cycle. We have a world language semester course that prepares students for a world language study in the high school if they never took one in the middle school. So if they were in support classes for 3 years, and while I want everyone to, I think we should teach math in French, to be quite honest with you. I want everyone to take languages all day long. But I get it, that there are other things pulling on these kids' daily lives. So there are some circumstances where we waive world language from their cycle, but we want them to have some kind of knowledge of what it looks like. So we offer a semester course called Foundations of Language to 8th graders, where the language of instruction is English with examples in Spanish, but it just teaches them what languages look like, that translation is not word to word, kind of preps them for when they go on to the high school. So what are our goals? The American Council of Teaching of Foreign Languages has this inverted pyramid, I guess you would say, that has proficiency levels. So at the end of middle school, our goal is that students are at a novice high level. That's the end of level 1. We want them to be a novice high learner, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. And because of this, students may not change languages during their study. It takes 3 years to become novice high. If you switch in the middle or have less time, you won't reach that level of proficiency. So you must remain in your language. So what can a novice language learner do? This graphic here, I have my teachers post in their classroom. This is the heart of what world language teaching is now. We're going to play teacher and students. What's in the center, class? Communication. That's the goal of everything we do. It's not grammar. It's not vocabulary memorization. It's not perfection or fluency. It's communication. We've all spoken with someone who doesn't speak English perfectly, but they've communicated with us and we know what they're talking about. That's the goal. And we stress that to our students, which is why you'll see very little grammar, direct grammar in our language program, really until the later levels. You don't teach your 2-year-old grammar, so we're not teaching our 6th or 7th graders grammar. And then through communication, we teach it through 3 modes of communication, which I have here. The interpretive mode, the interpersonal mode, and the presentational mode. And your students will come home from school in 6th grade and say, I have an interpersonal tomorrow. That's our assessment of them communicating with another person spontaneously. It's not just writing I remember writing the dialogue in the grocery store and getting up in front of the class and presenting it. That's a presentational. They wrote something, they're acting it out, they're presenting it. An interpersonal is a spontaneous interaction between 2 or more people. And the interpretive mode, which we do a lot of in the in the middle program novice levels, is reading and listening and just showing that you get it. So in those assessments, we'll give them authentic materials with questions in English. What is the title of this article? What do you think it's about? What's the weather like on the map in France today? So the students regularly go through authentic materials. And if you look in the red, it's hard to see. It says, identify the general topic and some basic information in familiar and everyday contexts by recognizing practiced or memorized words. Everything in all of these is really about, and I always say, the gist. Do they get the gist of what they see? Do they get the gist of what they hear? Are they able to communicate? So they'll be assessed in the interpretive, the interpersonal, and the presentational modes at a novice to novice high level. So here's the shift. When you go back and think, and if you're from another country, you learned a language, you learned English in a really different way. We, in our program now, have little to no use of a textbook in French, Spanish, and Italian. Textbooks confine students to filling in the blanks. And I don't know about you, but I've never walked into a cafe and filled in a blank. I've said a whole sentence. I've asked for a whole order of food. I haven't said, may I have a, and then my friend answered, pizza. That's not how it works. So the textbooks tend to have activities that are so structured like that, kids get stuck on them. Textbooks also are centered around vocabulary lists, memorized vocabulary lists. And I was at a great conference this weekend, and they said our vocabulary and the list that we create in our head is only made of words that are important to us. So every student's vocabulary list should really be different, because I might like soccer and you might like dance. I can be aware of the word, but if I don't remember the word dance one day, it's not a big deal. I might never even use it. So we expose them through interpretive activities, but they generate their own list. It's a living list. So there's very little to no use of a textbook. We create thematic units using authentic materials. Authentic materials are materials made by the target culture for the target culture. They're not necessarily made in Spain for Americans. They're made in Spain for Spaniards. Or they're made in France for the French. So that could be intimidating. If you walk into a 6th grade classroom, and I had another district tour our program, and it was December, and they walked into a 6th grade Spanish classroom. The kids were sitting all over the floor, reading like a magazine article about Navidad, Christmas. And the teacher said to me, do they know what they're reading? And I went, no! They have no idea, but we're teaching them to interpret. They know some words, they're looking at the pictures, they're using context clues, and they're gaining vocabulary through the practice. That's how you learn language. So it's really great that now with the internet, we can do this. The reason we couldn't do this when we were younger is because you didn't have access to these materials. We have them now, so we use them. The focus is on proficiency, the gist, the ability to communicate. We implement short stories and readers in our classes. And just in 7th and 8th grade, they actually read a chapter book. Now the chapters are a page and a half long, but they're reading a book in another language with a lot of words that wouldn't normally be on their vocabulary list. I saw a teacher this year say to a student, you can't use translators, you can't use translators. And this child used the word belongings in Spanish, which, think about it, belongings was never on any vocabulary list you ever got. And she said, I told you you're not allowed to use translators. And he said, I didn't. When we read that Day of the Dead book last year, they talked about bringing belongings to the cemetery. And she went, oh my gosh, that's right. So the kids are getting their own vocabulary through these little readers, which is really exciting. And some of our sample units in the middle school are, we do a winter carnival. Right now the kids, you can see up here, they're all making floats with a different theme. Here's actually a picture of our Spanish teachers. This teacher right here, Ms. Pizzuto, spent last year in Chile on a Fulbright scholarship. We're doing research on middle school literature for Chilean students, and she brought the books back and we're using them in our classrooms. We have Feast of San Gennaro. We do a whole unit on it in the Italian classes, and we do tapas in Spain and the whole culture around small plates and eating, where it comes from, and then they actually get to taste it. So now, how do you pick? They're all so good, right? I have a video that I've created with some slide images, and I see you taking pictures, by the way. This will be available. The PTO will blast this out. It'll be on my website as well as Ms. Bowman's website, so you can get these links. But I have a video that I've created that you can watch with your child. It's about 6 minutes long. It's pictures of our classrooms. It talks about our program. It kind of gets them excited. This is also called Lead with Languages Month. And the ACTFL, again, the American Council of Teachers of Foreign Languages, have put out a lot of great reasons to study languages. So if you go to this website, you can click on many languages, even one of your own if you have a native language, and it promotes it, so it can get you excited about it. So you and your child can look at that. But the proficiency develops mostly with an intrinsic motivation. If you tell your child, you're gonna be a doctor, you've gotta take Spanish, because in New Jersey there's a lot of people who will come in the hospital, that's not the right motivation. It's kind of true, but notice when you're watching the Olympics, what language are they doing it in? They're doing it in French too. As a former French teacher, I always have to promote it. So there are reasons to speak every language. If anything, it's making you learn about another culture, and if you love it, it'll be a stepping stone for you to learn more languages. You're not stuck with this one for the rest of your life. It may just open doors. So really make sure they're choosing what they like. Latin, I haven't spoken a lot about it because it is a little different than the way we teach our classes, because Latin isn't spoken. Latin is a mainly interpreted language, and they do focus on grammar in that class, because grammar and reading and translation is what you study in classics departments in universities. So in Latin, if your child is really interested in reading and decoding and history and culture, myths, the Greek gods and all of that, kids get really, really into it. If they're into that, that's the class they should take. It is more grammar-based, and it's a lot of reading. So if that's something that they're interested in, do it. French, Italian, and Spanish, we focus a lot on geography, current culture, talking, reading, writing. Notice I put here an American flag. I'm not promoting the study of the English language, but everything we do, we connect to our culture. If we go back to that communities, comparisons, connections, and cultures, that's the outside ring. So everything we teach in the middle school, we're saying, how are they like us? How are they different than us? How can we help one another? So that's an integral part of it. So the timeline. In January, the world language teachers came to all the fifth grade classrooms and did a little Jeopardy game promoting our program and getting them excited about it. It was just a 25-minute lesson, but it just showed them their options. In February, the WAMS counselors, I don't know if they've come yet or they're coming soon. They came already? Okay, to meet with the fifth graders and tell them about their options as well. And then in March, students will go through an online system. You'll receive information on how to select the language that they pick. We ask that that's the language they pick for all 3 years. If there's some extenuating circumstance in June where you go, I made my kid take French and they're so mad at me and they really want to take Italian, can I switch? I'll probably let them switch. It's just based on if the classes are full yet, okay? But we ask you to make that choice wisely when you submit that. And the last thing, I just want to show you where they go after the middle school. Yeah, we love our charts, don't we? This is my newest one. I got the color on this and I'm really excited about it. But, so in middle school there's 2 paths after middle school. So this is for students who've completed 8th grade. So that means if they took 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, or they did that Spanish 7th, 8th grade program, they go into level 2. If you do the math, that's 3 years in middle school is level 1, and 1 year in high school is level 1. Again, a high school kid and a 6th grader learn very differently. The 6th graders want to learn the colors and talk about them in color. A high school kid says, just tell me the colors, and they move on. So things happen differently. So it's okay that 3 years in middle school is 1 year in high school, and we're aware of that. So we make sure we balance out in level 2. So after level 1, they can go on to level 2 or 2 honors, then 3 or 3 honors, then they can go on to 4 honors in AP, or we have culture-based classes. You've met your 2-year Ridge requirement, you want to keep studying the language, but your AP is not what you're interested in right now. We have classes that take you on a tour of the world and go country to country to country, except in Italy, you're always in Italy. But in French and Spanish, you visit different countries, you learn about their culture all while speaking the language. The other option is if you want to switch your language. You can start off in level 1 in the high school, and then go 2, 3, 4, you just will not reach the AP route. There is one last addition before we end, is at our high school we offer American Sign Language. It's a newer program for us. This is our 2nd year of the program. It's doing so well, we just don't offer it at the middle school just yet. So if students wish to take that, or change their language, or we have many seniors who take it as a 2nd language at the high school, you can do that. So American Sign Language, we have levels 1 and 2, and potentially 3 and 4. And it's a great venue. There's no reading or writing, which if that's something your child struggles with, that's great. But you have to be really good at paying attention, because right now you can all close your eyes and still hear me. You can't close your eyes or look away from me in the American Sign Language class, because then you miss what's being said. So another thing to weigh out. And there's a little controversy about American Sign Language now that not all colleges accept it. Well, it's not that they don't accept it, it's that they might not offer it. The chances of finding a university that offers French or Spanish or Latin is much better than one that offers American Sign Language. So you may not be able to continue. On my website, there's also a list by a professor, and I believe in Nevada, who is constantly updating what universities have the programs or accepted. It's growing rapidly, so I wouldn't be worried, especially your children only going into 6th grade. But there is that little caveat right now that it may not be available to them at the higher level. Okay. So, are there any questions? We have Ms. Howard here with us. We have Dr. Heineman, our Director of Curriculum Instruction. Ms. Bowman and myself, we're available to speak with you and answer any questions you may have. We do just have to give you the microphone because we are recording it and won't be able to hear you.
Kids who are in G&T right now,
Right.
in 6th grade, do they need to go through another test before they go into algebra honors, the G&T program in 7th grade?
Good question. So what I believe you're asking is if you're automatically in G&T and you're in the 6th grade accelerated math class in 6th grade, do you automatically go into the 7th grade honors? No. Then at the end of 6th grade, you have to meet the criteria, which is the same as our honors criteria all the way through all of our math classes. If you're in the class in 6th grade accelerated, you need to have a B average at the end of the year to move on into 7th grade. And that's what I referred to before, and if it happened to have been a class that may have been too much for you in 6th grade accelerated math, then you do 7th grade math. It's not like you're repeating a program the way we do in other levels.
So just the grade, no vocab, no other?
No other map scores at all. Once you're in any of our honors classes, that's pretty much you're in, and then to stay in all the way through, you have to maintain for the final grade, okay?
Talk show.
Hi, I'm sorry to be critical, and honestly, I ask this question every year, and the answer is always disappointing to me, I think, is that do we ever consider diversify our languages? I mean, like, so many, I went to high school in Jacksonville, Florida in 1990 with zero diversity, and we have more languages to choose from than the 4 European languages. And I feel like the time is changing, and there's a lot other areas of the world that we might be interested in, you know. I mean, I personally would be selfish and advocate maybe Mandarin Chinese, and we used to have Japanese, and which we drop. Is there any possibility in the future that we'll consider diversifying our language choices?
Yes, I would love it. It's something that we tried. The Japanese program, we didn't just cut it. The enrollment, the senior class when we graduated that program a couple years ago had about 7 kids in it. So we can't run courses with less than 15 kids. It's not optimal for us. So that course faded itself out. And a lot of Japanese programs did. When that program started, I guess in the early 2000s maybe, we were cutting edge because we had Japanese. And it faded. And I believe the trend right now, I think a lot of districts are with Mandarin. I'm seeing a lot with Arabic. There is a lot of money coming from other countries to support the programs in this country, give supplies. I'm seeing a lot of different, I'm seeing Hindi and Gujarati too as well, or in some schools in New Jersey. So yes, I meant to mention, we do a program evaluation every 5 years where we really we poll the community, what do you want? What are we missing? And then we poll students. So the last time we did that, Mandarin and American Sign Language were the 2 most requested programs. So I think we presented it to the board, and a summer later, we offered Mandarin and American Sign Language the next year, and barely anyone took Mandarin. So the question is why? And that's the next steps. We had, I think it was less than 20 at the middle school, and it was definitely like less than 15 at the high school. It was very low, and at that point I said, oh my gosh, that's not what I thought it was going to be huge. Now, this is me speculating. I think it's because we only offered intro levels, and I think that some of the kids who would be interested in Mandarin already know it at the intro level and are looking to develop it more deeply. So that is certainly a possibility of looking at that down the line. But that was 3 years ago, so we went with American Sign Language where we had over 100 kids, and now we have a wait list for that course. So that's the direction we went, and that's our diversity right now. But I do agree with you. I think that is the one thing that's missing from our program that would make it better. So it's constantly talked about, but we tried it, and it's just not there yet. But I can tell you that I am very aware of what's going on in the state and the nation, and I know what's best, and I'm always looking deeper into that.
Hi, how are you? I'm actually more interested in seeing the world language at the elementary level, even just to expose them maybe each year, maybe each semester to different languages so that when they finally get to middle school, they'll know what they're more interested in, and they also have a basic foundation. Because at that level, they're actually sponges and they absorb it so much more. So is there any plans in the future?
Yes. I would love that as well. There are an enormous amount of strings that you have to pull to create a successful elementary program. We completed our elementary program evaluation in the summer of, I want to say 7, are we in 18 already? Yeah, so I think we completed it in the summer of 17 or 16. We presented it to the Board of Education. There's a lot of initiatives going on right now in this district, and there's only so much money, so we have to choose wisely. I can tell you, and I see some of our board members here, I think I mention that every time we have a meeting. So I've looked, I did. I am the biggest advocate for it. It's not off the table. It's just a really big investment and a change in what the elementary schedule looks like. So that's a big shift, but it's constantly being discussed. And I appreciate that you value that.
Can you talk about some of the visits that were done for K-5?
Yeah, we did some really awesome visits. If you're familiar with some of the stronger world language programs in the state, Princeton Public Schools has a remarkable program. They also have a dual language track. So students start in kindergarten, half day in Spanish, half day in English. And depending on the week, their subjects are taught in that language. So they might have math and Spanish this week and then math and English next week. We visited those programs in addition to their, I think almost daily or at least 3 times a week, just elementary Spanish program. And that's the thing is, these programs that are good and successful are more than once a week. And if we can only find time in our busy schedule, because we have a lot of demands on our students, we want the best and they're really good. I'm not going to back a program that is 1 day of world language a week. I'd rather have them have an extra day of math, to be quite honest. I don't think that it's beneficial to learn something once a week. Our Latin program is kind of a fun exposure-based program, but it's not a proficiency-based program. So if we could do something frequently, we would. Another program we visited was in Hillsborough. They have half the year they do Chinese and or Mandarin, and half the year they do Spanish. And every year they get exposure to both of those. And they have a 6-day cycle, and they do it 2 cycles. So twice every 6 days they have a language class, which still isn't optimal, but it's something. So the biggest thing right now is where do you find time in our day to implement a worthy program? But we're looking at it.
Hi, because we just moved to here in 2016. Actually, my son, he was taking the language class in the elementary school since he was secondary. I think the class they were used is the Rosetta Stone, that software. So, but it's very like entry level. So during the whole elementary schools, they have already kind of like have the introductions of all kind of possible languages. And then when they go to the middle school, it's easier to, to let them choose which one they really interest. But I just think of that, but my real question is, because my son tells me that if he learns certain language, they will have opportunity to go to the area they're using this language, right? It happens in the middle school or high school.
I want to say yes again, but so first of all, let me talk about the Rosetta Stone. That I know schools that use it. There's another program also called Middlebury Interactive. Middlebury language school is incredible. And the schools that do that, they do allow diversity in their program because they could buy the software in many languages. The students could all pick a language, and however minutes you allocate toward it a week, they could sit at a computer with a headset on and participate. And they probably like it because they're on a computer, it's fun, and languages are awesome, right? I don't love it. I like live interaction with the specialist, but it is an option. In response to your question about trips, our district currently has 1 approved international trip. We take students, we offer it every year, it tends to be every other year. We take a group of students to Quebec City. They take a bus there, they go for a long weekend, they speak French the whole time. They're going this April, and it's awesome. We've done it, I think we've done it 3 or 4 times already. That's the only international trip that we approve right now. Are there other trips that happen with our staff? Yes. Are they board approved? No. So I can't guarantee them. I know of some this summer, teachers on their own time, they have their own insurance policy, they have their own contracts, they meet off school grounds, and it's at their will, but it is not a board-approved part of our curriculum. We don't offer something like that right now. We just have the French trip, basically because we can drive, and it's a little safer in our climate right now. But again, I would love that. I'll chaperone every trip. You can come with me, actually. Any other questions?
Can we look back at the sequence chart for the G&T again? Because I'm just not understanding how they're not repeating Math 7 if they don't get the B. Because right now, the G&T kids in 5th grade are using the Math 6 book. So my understanding was next year when they go to William Annan, they'll be doing the Math 7 book.
Right. So that's, for me to walk up, what's going to be happening is we're changing the 7th grade. So when these current 5th grade students are in 7th grade, the proposal is, and hopefully we'll go through, is that there will be 2 7th grade programs. An accelerated 7th grade math and a 7th grade math. So obviously the student who, because that's not up, oh, I guess it is up here now.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. But does that mean it's a done deal?
No, it does not. This is the plan.
It is the plan. So basically, the standards are the same. It will be taught differently, and so they'll get reinforcement of what they already learned, but it won't be the exact same program that they're getting right now.
Right, so is the question if they're in accelerated math 6 and they're not successful to move on to honors algebra, and instead they go into accelerated math 7? Is that the question?
Yes.
I don't
William added, and they're gonna do math 7.
No.
No, so, right, so you're talking about, right, so fifth grade students who are not following the traditional track and are going to go to Math 6, those students who are going to accelerated Math 6 will be using the grade 7 and 8 materials. This year, those students they're using the grade 6 materials in fifth grade. So in sixth grade, they'll be using the grade 7 and 8 material, and hopefully that's the population of students that now, traditionally, we're seeing go into our 7th grade algebra. So remember, the goal is right now, and historically, kids went into grade 6, they got grade 6 standards, and if they were successful, they went into algebra, and they never saw grade 7 and 8 standards. So they had 2 years of mathematics standards that they had never been exposed to, and we were seeing loss of students out of the program at the high school level, and kind of what we posited was that they were missing 2 grade levels of standards, and that left some inherent weaknesses in their understanding, and eventually come Algebra 2, come pre-calculus, they were struggling and not continuing on into the higher levels of AP Calc. So the goal of this program really was to have those students who were traditionally ending up in our 7th grade algebra class to be exposed to all the grade level standards. So a student who is in 5th grade now, who ends up in grade 7 algebra, right, in 2 years, right, so a 5th grader now, grade 7 algebra 2 years, unlike students the past several years, those students will have seen via what they call a compressed standard, via that model, they will have seen every math standard through grade 8 before being exposed to algebra. So that was the goal, and hopefully we're going to see a much stronger progression of students continuing on through the program. Because ideally, a student who is 2 levels accelerated, right, if you're 2 years accelerated, as Ms. Bowman mentioned, our hope would be that those, because what that gets you is, you have to think all the way down the line. 2 years of acceleration gets you Calc BC as a senior in high school, right? That's really what you gain. So you're trying to think of why would I do this? What you get is, instead of Calc AB by accelerating 1 year, you can get to Calc BC as a senior, right? That's really the only thing you have to gain from that. So ideally, if that's what you're looking to gain, you'd hope those kids in grade 7 algebra get to that point. Now, obviously, a few kids along the way decide, like, okay, I don't love math as much as I thought I did as a sophomore or a junior, and they stop doing it. That's going to happen to a few, but we were seeing quite a few students not progressing. So the goal of this program was to have those students from grade 5 now. Next year, grade 5 now, they'll have the grade 6 standards. Next year, they'll have the grade 7 and 8 standards, and then they go into algebra. So they're actually following the true progression of standards all the way through. I don't know what our total is this year. Total number of students in Calc BC this year, we 1 section?
No, we have 2.
Two sections
We do
this
have
year?
2.
Yeah.
Quick clarification, please.
Sure.
The textbook for accelerated math 6 and the textbook for accelerated math 7, are
So,
they both
yes.
the same textbook?
Exactly. So ideally, if you have a student in accelerated math 6 who's not successful, that student will have some repeat exposure in the following grade. But if they're not successful, they probably should have repeat exposure in the subsequent grade, right? So the concept is, well, if you weren't successful, we're going to have to let you go through it again. We don't really know how many students we're looking at, right? If the qualifications to get into accelerated math 6 are what we think they are, hopefully we'll find that the vast majority of students who are in that course will be successful and will go into algebra. Now, might there be a handful of kids? We find that literally in every program we have with this acceleration, some kids just don't maintain it and can't go on. And as Ms. Bowman mentioned, you have to get yourself, I know this is an elementary presentation, you have to start thinking of, as you progress towards the high school, the second you begin the honors level, and you see honors, the first time you'll see it for your students is grade 7. That's the first time you see that title. When you begin that series of programming, it functions as our official G&T program in the district, but it no longer follows your traditional onboarding methodologies where it's an assessment or something like that. It then follows the regular progression, which is if you're in honors, you need a B to stay in honors, and if you're not, you need an A minus, or an A, excuse me, in mathematics. So, so once you're in honors, all the rest goes out the window, and to maintain it, right, it's kind of what you've done prior is irrelevant. You're in honors algebra 1 in 7th grade, you need to get that B to move on to the next course, and you need to maintain that every single year going forward, or else you'll fall out of that honors track and program at the high school or the middle school.
May I just jump on to the one, also, if a student did do that and went to the 7th grade accelerated, then in 8th grade, Right now, currently, I shouldn't say just, because we have in 8th grade currently today, there is Math 8, there is Algebra, there is Geometry. By the time our 5th grade students here get to 8th grade, there will also be an Honors Algebra. So, in theory, if that student was a top kid, which you would think they were, if they went into an accelerated 6th grade math program and it wasn't the right time, they took a step back and repeated into 7th grade accelerated, then they have the opportunity to still accelerate and get into honors algebra in 8th grade. So, and to answer what I was trying to allude to before, right now the way it is we don't start accelerating until 7th grade currently, and then students who don't do well repeat algebra and they never get those 7th and 8th grade standards, which is my pet peeve, that a student currently that is in 6th grade does really well, goes on to honors 7th grade algebra, struggles a bit, doesn't have that B average. Well, their option is to repeat algebra again, so which is not a bad thing at all, but they're not getting the standards that they already skipped to begin with. So this way, we're hoping that there's less students actually skipping any standards.
I have a quick question. I think some of the moms would like to know, in case since from 5th to 6th grade, since you're skipping 2 grades of math, right, for accelerated math program. So if your kid is somewhat the borderline, needs a little extra help, is there any support at the school or after school that the kids can go to the teachers and get some support? Because you would like your kids, if they can, to stay with the program, but they're borderline struggling, or maybe they did not understand, or the teacher didn't clarify the material enough. Is there any support system to help the kids stay in the program?
So you're talking about somebody who's accelerating, other than going to the teacher for extra help, and there's a lot of online resources that the teachers do suggest. So I know, and especially at the high school, even now there are teachers the students are reaching out to find out, as well as going to extra help. Then there's things they can do on their own. But as far as having like a support class, the students, all math teachers provide a lot of extra help. and so they're there usually in the morning. They all have, in the middle school, every website has passes. Every teacher gives extra help. They have different sessions.
Yes. Yeah, so all of our teachers offer extra help in just about every subject. Every teacher's schedule is a bit different, and at the beginning of the year, that's one of the things that the teachers will go over with their students. The times that they offer extra help. So for some teachers, it's before school starts. For some teachers who have common lunch as the grade that they're teaching, it may be during their lunch period. And for some teachers, it may be after school, but it's really dependent on that individual teacher. But all of our teachers offer extra help.
Yeah, if I could jump right in again, I would say, if you're in that situation and your child is on the fringe of qualifying and struggling, you have to keep in mind, what is the end game, right? Once again, if you're in algebra in grade 8, not grade 7, grade 8, AP Calculus is still a viable option, right? You still can get to AP Calculus as a senior, which is a very difficult, challenging, high-level math course. The thing that you gain from starting a year earlier is a second year of calculus. So, if you know your child has aspirations, your discussions about that, you think that maybe they have a passion for a STEM career, that's one thing. But if not, and they're on the fringe, you have to have a really, hard conversation about, well, what are we really gaining from this? Is the struggle here worth it? Because remember, and you'll hear the speech from me when you go from 8th grade into 9th grade, is, it's the struggle in math, yes, but now all of a sudden you start tacking on, well, I'm also struggling. I've written these papers for language arts, and I'm also struggling because I decided to take honors social studies, and I'm also struggling because I'm in 2 sports and I'm also in band. So all of a sudden, the one little struggle becomes overwhelming, right? So you have to kind of pick your battles and decide, well, yes, we're going to try to push through math because we want to get to that second level of calculus, but we know we have to make different decisions for other classes when that time comes around in 8th grade, okay? So try to keep all those things in mind, really be thoughtful and holistic about the selections if you're in a situation like that where they're really working overly hard to stay in a course. That's kind of a warning sign that we see with students all through middle school and high school. So next question.
Hi, this question is for Mrs. Tara only. Now, as I understand, a child can get into the accelerated course only if you have been a GT student in grade 5 or if you have 245 above in the MAP score or 80%. Now, for a student who is new to the district in grade 5, and I identify one more mom here, so there might be a question. What are the prospects for that child to get into the accelerated course? He or she has only appeared for a MAP test, which was, somehow I don't understand the relevance of the MAP test right now, because now I see the scores, they are important for the accelerated admissions, but we were told it's...
And they were not. The ones that were just done in the wintertime, that is not the MAP score. We're going to do it again.
At the end of the year in
May. Right, it's the May MAP score, it'll be the end of May.
Because what we understood from the MAP tests were that they are a method to evaluate the performance of the teacher based on the performance of the student. This is what was my understanding till now.
Yes, that is what the winter session
And you don't
is.
need to study about it because it doesn't affect your grades.
No,
So
you know, and this is what I'm going to piggyback off of Dr. Heinemann. Studying for something to try to get into something and that is then going to be a struggle, that's where we really have to start thinking about what the
studying,
decision.
I mean revising.
Just, you know
Brushing
what,
up.
I really believe, honestly, if they're capable of an accelerated math program, then that would show itself in the MAP test, in getting the 245 or higher, and the same thing with the test. I mean, and then from there, we just take it, year by year.
So for a child who has never, who's new to the district, he hasn't appeared for the 2 to 5 MAP tests, the 2 to 5 NWEA MAP tests, because he's new to grade 5. He's new to the district in grade 5.
Right.
So the only options that he or she has, is the May and June MAP tests. Is it?
The May MAP test, if the scores are 245, and if there's a unique situation, that is something that can be discussed behind the scenes. But right now, straightforward, as far as what's going to be the standard way, is not to think about anything. Once this MAP test is given, students who get a 245, and that's also on the, that's, believe me, this is our first time going through this, so we went lower. So we're expecting to get a large amount of students who will have that score, but they may also decide, I don't want to do this. This is not what I want. Or even mom and dad may say, we know math is not your thing right now. You don't need to accelerate 2 years. You're not going to take that test. This is not written in stone. This is just guidelines. So if a student doesn't get that 245, that's a different conversation.
That's absolutely fine, but at least one should give it a shot.
Yes.
Actually, for the process, if the kid is currently not in the district will join WAMS, so are they supposed to sign up to take the MAP test in May here? Or
No, they do not have to, because they're not registered in the district
Right.
yet.
Any
No,
student-
they're not registered in the district yet. When, in WAMS, we do summer MAP testing for other reasons too for kids, because of the same thing with our current honors algebra program and our current 8th grade geometry. When students come from other districts in the summer, we do run 1 or 2 sessions of MAP testing at that time too.
okay, and will they also take the other requirement is the internal internal 6th grade math test?
Yes, they'll do the same thing, but that could be done over the summer, so that's not something you have to worry until they're a student.
Register.
Mr. Heinemann? We'll get to you.
My question is more not...
For world language?
No, not necessarily the cohort of the GNT 5th grade math now, but those already in William Annan, because I forgot to ask this before. Those in, say, 7th grade honors algebra, can they access the 7th and 8th grade textbook somewhere in case they wanted, say, for fun to see what they missed?
Yes.
How can we do that?
My website.
Your website?
My website has a bazillion links. So on my website, yes, and we do lend out books over the summer as well. Okay? No.
Yeah, I have a question. Actually, I know my son, he tried, but he never make it the test of the GT. So whatever. I don't push him, so if he can pass the test, that's great. But he really have the enthusiasm on math. So right now the CML program is really good for him because he can't make it test. I don't know why, because maybe he's nervous or something. So, but I want to know if in the middle school, I mean, if he cannot make it the GT program, but he really have enthusiasm to do the math, do they still have some programs like the CML right now? So let him to challenge himself, you know, to keep his enthusiasm. I don't care about his score. I just care about his enthusiasm.
Love for math, right? Yes, no. The teachers also, they do differentiate in the classroom. There's a lot of enrichment that's been provided. We do have cluster grouping as well in 6th grade, so teachers are aware that even though the student may not be at the accelerated level, they have very strong math students as well as struggling. So they do have all kinds of activities and enrichment within the classroom, as well as we have middle school math contests. And we actually, just I'm going to do a plug, we have, this is the first year we have WHAM's Math Counts. If anybody is aware of the Math Counts competition, and our William and the middle school team has ranked number 2 in the region, and in March 10th, we are going to be at Rutgers competing for the state championship. Isn't that cool?
Any other questions? Okay.
Are you still going to continue the math acceleration during the summer?
I want to know, are you still having plans to continue the summer accelerated math courses for geometry and algebra?
Okay, very reluctantly, we are having the acceleration of algebra. We have an Algebra 1 summer 7-week acceleration class for students who are currently, right now, in 7th grade and would like to go straight to geometry in 8th grade. This plan, hopefully, will eventually phase the need for that out. But right now, as we speak, it does exist and it will go as planned for this current summer.
I'm sorry if I missed this earlier, but is it explained anywhere what the criteria is to qualify for the next grade?
Wait. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. See, they know my slides. I'm sorry, say
Is it described anywhere, the criteria you need to qualify for moving into each program? So from 7th grade, what do you need to have?
Yes, all that is on my website. Actually, on my website, if you go on to my website, the math website, on the side tabs, it's K5 information, WHAM's information, Bridge High School information, and there's tons of links there. This is the criteria, though, since we're talking right now, 5th grade into 6th. This is the criteria to get into the 6th grade accelerated math.
And then if you're in 7th grade, what do you need to get into 8th grade algebra?
If you are in 7th grade right now, you need to have, there's a rubric, it's on my website, but you need, I think it's a 2, I have to forget the numbers, it's like a 248 maybe is the minimum number of math score, and then there's, you have to have A, assessment grades in 6th grade. So right now the 6th grade student in 6th grade to get into algebra in 7th grade, is that what you're asking me?
No, I'm asking 7th grade right now,
Oh.
do they need to get into 8th grade algebra?
Oh, you're gonna love this answer.
Go ahead.
Whatever you want.
Do you know,
There is no, in 7th grade, the teachers will make a recommendation, but parents may choose.
Okay.
So you will get a recommendation from the teacher, but there is no criteria. Obviously, a struggling 7th grade student would not be wise to take 8th grade algebra, some do, but the 7th grade teachers will make a recommendation.
And if you question the recommendation, it's probably a good thing to reach out to the teacher and have a conversation about it.
What is your website? I'm sorry.
What is your website again? You keep referring to your website.
This is a perfect transition, because Mr. Fackelman just said, if you don't mind, we'll just show you quickly where you'll be able to access this presentation via the district site. So,
yeah, Some of you know me. I had a conversation earlier about where can we find presentations. So we looked at a couple places, so we're going to show you real quick. So if you go to the district website and you want to click along the left side, where it says parents, because you're parents. So click parents, and then you're going to get, staying on that left side, go down in that blue column where you see presentations. Yep. Presentations, and you'll get all the district presentations. So the Community in Crisis with Dr. Bradley's here. That was just on at the end of January. So all the presentations that were videotaped are located there. And from this website, you can also launch into the supervisor's sites as well. So going back to the left side, curriculum. And then it's pretty self-explanatory. You'll see, scroll down, you see all of our departments.
You do need an accelerated math degree to navigate the website.
So and that's where you'll find stuff. And as was mentioned earlier, this presentation we pushed out to all the schools, each of the elementary schools, and Blue Friday folder, I believe Joanne said we can push it out that way, and then also be on both of their websites as well. You don't want to miss Van Gogh and the color boxes. Those are important things.
So the previous conditions like the baking, whatever, is not there. I asked you, because I wasn't able to go there.
Yes. Yep. The only ones that aren't there are the ones that we had technical issues. So if you can't find it, it's because we had a problem with the video, but this will probably be up, if not later today, tomorrow sometime.
Thank you. At that point, we need the cafeteria for lunch now, so.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming.